Legendary, Oscar-nominated film star Carroll Baker, who has written 4 books, the last of which is Who Killed Big Al, to rave reviews. So she's not only a beautiful movie star, but she's also an author and a great person. Interviewing Carroll, we have Foster Hirsch. He's a professor of film at Brooklyn University for 53 years and still running, which is great. He's written many books on film and theater. His latest coming out is Hollywood in the 50s, produced by Alfred Knopf. So we welcome both of them to the stage, and we would like to begin the performance or the interview with clips from Carroll's fabulous shows, Harlow, Carpetbaggers, Giant, on and on and on. So welcome Foster and welcome Carroll.
Thank you.
I'm sure you're going to be a very big star.
Oh, thank you. You know, this was my first movie, Giant, and it's my first opening night, and we're just terribly excited about it.
Of course you must be. Well, I hear that Elia Kazan says that you're going to be a great star. So with Elia Kazan and George Stevens, you will be.
Well, I think
This is the 19-year-old baby doll. She wouldn't let her husband come near her. She wouldn't let the stranger go away.
Oh, Mr. Carroll, you certainly are getting familiar.
Don't you have any fun-loving spirit about you?
Well, this isn't fun.
Her name is Carroll Baker. She has the same special raw electricity you found before only in Marlon Brando and James Dean.
I find you different this evening.
Never mind that. Just go while he's still on the phone.
Grown up suddenly.
I feel cool and rested for the first time in my life.
Just what makes you so different?
because I'm me, Jean Harlow, not one of those...
It's here. The sizzling story that shocked the world is finally on the screen. Harlow, produced by Joseph E. Levine and Paramount Pictures, starring Carroll Baker as Harlow. She stood for only one thing, but she stood for it as no other woman has before or since. What was Harlow really like? She was the platinum blonde who became the most desirable woman in the world. She was the glittering, glamorous movie queen who put Hollywood on the map. The girl who couldn't taste life, she had to devour it.
Bedroom was to the left, as I remember.
It still is.
Well, then you shouldn't have any trouble finding it.
This is the hot, hard Harlow story with the big international cast.
I'm yours any way you want me. Oh, love me, Joan. Love me, love me, love me.
What for?
You know you want me more than anything in the world.
I just wanted to see how far you'd go before your late husband was cold.
I'd go further than you'd ever dare.
It is unlikely that you will experience in your lifetime all that you will see in The Carpetbagger.
Look, Eleanor, all I can do is tell you how flattered I am, but it happened too late for me. You'll find somebody else. The world is full of exciting people, much more exciting than I am.
Oh, you know that isn't true.
But how would it look? You, a young girl in her early 20s, and me, an old man of 44.
I wouldn't care how it looked. All I know is that I love you, and I don't care what the whole world thinks.
Pretty nicely, wonderful, beautiful girl bride. Poor boy. Rich Mrs. Benedict. She's beautiful, lovely. The woman a man wants. Well, a man's gotta have to.
In Rome, you know, they don't have direct sound. They dub everything. There's like 2-3 actresses, so everybody in a film sounds exactly alike. So because they don't care about the sound, there are all kinds of noises and different things that go on, and people move around. It's very distracting. It's hard to work in an Italian film. So my first one, of course, I was very nervous, and I was preparing, because I go to the actor's studio and we prepare before we come on, and I was very nervous. I have to go into my father, who's sitting in his office behind a big desk, and I'm there to tell him, the name of the film is The Harem, and I'm there to tell him that I'm in love with 5 men.
Why don't we get her on
and
the
I'm going to live with all of them.
stage?
And he's going to pay for the villa. So this was, you know, very emotional things to do, and I have a long speech and so forth. So when I finish, the man behind the desk goes, and no sound comes out. And then I hear a voice underneath the desk. So I forgot about the scene. I leaned down and I said, "Excuse me, who are you?" He said, "I'm the actor playing your father." I said, so I stood up, and the man sitting in my father's place, I said, "Well then, who are you?" He said, "I'm the pizza man. I bring in the pizza. The director, he looked at me, he said, "I like your face better than his. Sit down." So I played to somebody on the floor.
So you're used to chaos.
Yeah, I'm used to chaos.
Okay, let's sit. Let's start.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll stand here.
Yeah.
I can't get
Go
here.
So she can get to there.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Okay, look, you'll sit and then we'll have
For the moment, I'll stand, okay?
For the moment. Okay, Carroll, what is the first thing you like to say to an audience when we begin one of our vaudeville skits?
Well, I know that when you're an actress, everybody, especially the ladies, want to know how old you are. And I am 88. And then, of course, the second question is, if you're that old, how is your health? Well, I can't really see very well, and I don't hear well, and as you can see, I don't walk. But other than that, I'm in great shape.
Okay, now, so we're here today to celebrate Carroll's publication at the age of 88, a new book. Isn't that good?
Yes.
Isn't that wonderful? Yes. That's wonderful. That's the spirit that keeps her going. But because we're here at the Distinguished Friars Club, and you're billed as Hollywood legend, before we get to the book, this dear audience does want to know a little bit about your career. So you've agreed to talk a little bit about Hollywood. I can tell you, I know Carroll Baker very well. She does not live in the past. She does not. She has no scrapbooks. She has no memorabilia. She lives in the moment. Is that good? She lives in the moment. But she's agreed, for the publicity purposes of the book, because she knows people are curious, to talk a little bit about the past. So let's start with your first film, Giant, which you've all seen, and is one of the classics of the American screen. And in Giant, you worked with an actor named James Dean. And I have to tell you, I teach at Brooklyn College, and I sometimes hesitate to ask students, have you heard of Marlene Dietrich? And no hand goes up. Every time I ask students about James Dean, every time, 20-year-old students raise their hands and they know the name. His fame has endured. Did it ever occur to you while you were working with him in Giant that this man would in effect have permanent fame?
No, because it was my first film, and Jimmy had already made a film, and I knew he was very talented, very, very talented. We were in the acting studio together, so we knew one another very well. But, you know, at that age, fortunately, you don't think about the hereafter. You don't really concentrate on the hereafter.
Did you think he was particularly talented?
Oh yes, very much so. Very much so. I think he would always have been a big star. Always.
It would have continued?
Yes.
What did he have? What was it?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, a lot of men his age identify with him, and a lot of women too. There was something about, it was really without a cause, really, where people remembered him, because they thought that he was talking about their lives as well as his own.
And my 20-year-old students today continue to feel that they can identify with him.
Isn't that amazing?
It's an amazing thing.
Yes.
He has not dated. The acting hasn't dated. You told me you will never sit through Giant again, but you have good feelings about the film.
Oh yes, I love Giant, but you know, in Texas they went mad for years and years and years. And I was sent to Dallas so many times. Now the film is very long, and I sat through that film so many times. I'll never sit through it again.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Oh, but I have to tell you, one of the times when we were in Dallas, where they were showing Giant, Neiman Marcus threw the party. And we were all downstairs on the main floor where all the counters and everything were. And we had a drink, and then my voice comes over, and he says, smoked salmon is in lingerie. Shrimp is in handbags. They had the various, all the counters had their various food.
Now, what's very amusing, do you remember that Carroll Baker plays Elizabeth Taylor's daughter in Giant? Do you all remember that? Carroll Baker in the real world was 1 year older than Elizabeth Taylor.
And she loved that. She used to say to everybody, she's my daughter, but she's older than me.
What was it like playing against a woman as your mother, who in fact was a year older than? Did the makeup convince you that she looked older?
Yeah, I thought Elizabeth was wonderful in that role. I really thought she was very convincing. She's a good actress.
She's a wonderful actress.
Yeah,
You also said, I'll never forget it, you said, when you saw her, her beauty took your breath away.
Yes, because when I worked with her, she had on the old age makeup. And then one day, I came out, her car was there, she was standing beside it, and you look at her, she was dead gorgeous. She was just so beautiful, unbelievable.
Did it spoil her? Was she well adjusted to it?
Well, I have my own theory about Elizabeth, and in my autobiography, Baby Doll, I wrote about her. I'm surprised that nobody's picked this up, because I think this is absolutely what Liz Taylor was and why she was that way. She was actually raised at MGM. She didn't know the world that we all know. And everything that she did, for example, if she had an affair with a guy, she had to marry him. That's why she married so many times. Because in MGM, the girls don't go to bed with somebody that they're not married to. Yeah.
So she lived in MGM world.
She lived in MGM world, and all all her attitude toward life and something was not at all like anybody else's. It was an MGM world where she lived.
And she remained in that worldview
Yes.
her entire life. Now, your second film, which we all know, was the notorious Baby Doll, but it doesn't need to be notorious at all. Have you seen it? Have you seen Baby Doll? It's one of the great performances in American films that Carroll Baker gives. And Carroll feels the film hasn't been given its proper due. I think it has. But anyway, there's going to be a screening at the Film Forum on December 11th. And Carroll and I will be to talk about the film. But as a preview, what was it that so enraged Cardinal Spellman and the censors against this film?
Well, it was very hard for me to know. The two films that I did, Giant, and then I did Baby Doll, and but they were both, it took so long to do Giant in the cutting room that they were both came out almost simultaneously, little openings in New York, 1 week apart. Now, when I was working on Giant, and I was under contract to Warner Brothers, and the poor publicity girl was always bringing reporters over and saying, interview Carroll Baker, interview. Nobody wanted to interview me. Are you kidding? When you had Elizabeth Taylor, Rock Hudson, and James Dean, you're going to talk to somebody you don't know anything about? So, I wasn't savvy at all about the press. And one Sunday morning, my phone rang, I picked it up, and he said, "This is Mr. So-and-so from the A&P. Your film has just been condemned by the Catholic Legion of Decency, and Cardinal Spellman has stood up in St. Patrick's Cathedral and condemned the film. What do you have to say?" I said, "Which film?"
But you did find out later, many years afterwards, why Catholics were offended by Baby Doll.
Yeah, and you know, the Vatican and Rome, I played all over Europe, and the Vatican didn't mind it. Well, the censorship of the Motion Picture Association and the Legion of Decency were sort of at loggerheads all the time. And it came to a head on Baby Doll. And I found out years later that one of the reasons was the fact that the marriage was not consummated. And that was very funny in the movie. That's a sin in the Catholic Church.
In the Catholic Church, an unconsummated marriage is a sin.
Yes.
And Baby Doll,
well, that was one of the themes.
That was one of the themes of the film.
Yeah.
But you played the part as Baby Doll is seduced and not virginal by the end of the story, and she becomes a young woman. And Eli Wallach, who plays your seducer, didn't see it that way. Who was right, you or Eli?
Well, Eli was very naive. Believe it or not, he was. He was a darling guy, and I miss him so much. And almost everybody that I worked with is gone, and that is a terrible feeling. It's terrible. Makes me so sad.
Well, on that theme, do you know How the West Was Won, the great Cinerama film? When it opened in 1963, say, 24 great stars in How the West Was Won. 24 great stars. In 2019, only one of those stars is with us. Only one. You're in many of your films, you are the only survivor who can still speak about the film.
Yes, I think almost everyone.
In almost every one.
Except, I think George Maharis is still with us.
Yes. Yes, so there are a few. There are a few.
Yeah.
Sylvia, there are a few, yes. Elizabeth Ashley.
Elizabeth Ashley.
Yes. Now, Carroll worked with, I would say, a case could be made, the 4 greatest directors in American film history. For Baby Doll, Elia Kazan. For Giant, George Stevens. For The Big Country, William Wyler. For The Cheyenne Autumn and How the West Was Won, the great John Ford. All of them chose to work with Carroll Baker. These are four great directors. Did
Yes.
they have anything in common, one with the other, or were they very different people?
They all liked me. No, actually, what happened was that I was studying at the Actors Studio, and I was just a new student, more or less. And at that time, the studio was such a magical name that people were coming from Hollywood all the time, and there's a new girl, she's pretty, she's young, and she's at the Actors Studio, so that meant, okay, you were going to be okay. And so many of them came and wanted me to be under contract that at a certain moment, although I really would love to have stayed longer at the Actors Studio and studied a bit more, I said to myself, okay, you can't keep saying no all the time because they're not going to come back again. So I asked some friends at the Actors Studio, I said, look, I don't feel prepared yet to do a film. I really don't. And they said, well, you know what? Pick a great director and leave it to him. And so that's why I always chose good directors.
You chose George Stevens and then Kazan.
Yes.
Now, every actor I've talked to who worked with Kazan said he was the greatest of all actors, directors.
Yes, he was.
What did he have that made him so special in working with actors?
He'd been an actor himself, and he was just so very real. He used to interview all the actors separately and ask them, what in the character can you identify with? Or something that you can substitute for what this character is feeling. For example, I heard the story that when he did a stage play, he used to say to the actors, and this was before the set, he used to say to the actors, now, where would your favorite chair be? Where would you like to sit? And who would you like to face? And, so you became a part of the creation as well as doing your own part.
He made you feel part of the process.
Yes.
And he was a very good student of human behavior, I'm sure.
Oh, yes, he was.
He saw, I met him once, and I felt that he saw right through you. He had that capacity.
Yes, he did.
He had laser vision in terms of human psychology.
Yeah.
Did you have any directors who were dim about human behavior?
Oh, yeah, I had a lot of sneaky directors, but they weren't in America.
They weren't in America. They were abroad. Okay, now, would you say, well, we're among friends here, there were some people you worked with you weren't fond of. Most of your co-stars were wonderful people.
Yeah.
Did you see the look she just gave me? Okay, then. Did you see that look?
Okay, well, I mean, George Papard has a son, and I don't like to, But I said this to a producer the other day, and he said to me, well, how old is his son? I said, well, I guess he's in his 60s. He said, hey, he can take anything you dish out, baby. No, it went to his head that he had this great part in Carpetbaggers, and he wasn't very nice to particularly Alan Ladd, who was going through a very difficult time.
But you felt protective of Alan.
Oh, yes. Well, so did everybody. He was this wonderful guy. He really was.
Are you proud of Harlow now, all these years later? I know it was difficult making the film, and it was a difficult time in your life, but are you proud of it now?
Not really. No, it's okay. It's okay. But we had such struggles. I guess I can't get over that. We had such struggles. Some of you might have known Joe Levine, and Rosalie, his wife. Well, he was the producer, and he was not very up on what you do to make a film. So when they gave me Harlow, which I had to do because I was under contract to Paramount at the time, it was full-length film. And Harlow had not passed the age of 16. So there was nothing about her career, there was nothing about her sex symbol image, nothing about those great fun things that they used to do. in the old-time movies. So I said, well, I can't do this. I'm not going to commit suicide. So I just fled. I fled, and I talked to John Michael Hayes, who was a terrific screenwriter, and I knew him from the Carpetbaggers, so I knew that this was kind of his material. So I offered him half of my percentage and said, will you write the screenplay for me?
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
And then it became something you could do.
Oh, yes,
Then you
yeah,
could
yeah,
do.
I did, yeah.
And Levine accepted that?
Well, he had to,
He
because
had
I
to.
wasn't there.
You weren't going to do it otherwise.
I wasn't around.
And when you had about 10 or 11 years in Rome and making European films, and
I've already covered
you've already
that.
covered
I've already covered that. That's one of my best stories. Yeah. Imagine playing a scene and the voices coming from underneath the desk. Yeah.
Would you say the Italians were not well organized?
I think you could say that. Anybody who's been in Italy knows that.
Now, when you come back to America, you start to do character work, and you really never wanted to be typecast as baby doll or sex symbol. You really wanted to play a range of roles.
Right.
And didn't that happen when you came back to America? You were a little older then.
Yes.
You play a blind woman in Native Son.
Mm-hmm.
You play a mother in Star 80, and you're Jack Nicholson's wife in Iron Week. Do you know that film? I mean, there's some wonderful character work. So, what's the highlight of the post-Italy American career for you? Kindergarten Cop with Arnold Schwarzenegger?
Oh yeah, Kindergarten Cop, yeah, I love that. Yeah, it was Arnold's also his most famous film. It made more money than all his other films put together.
Really?
Yeah, and that's the only one you receive a residual if a movie plays long enough. And that was the only one that I got a residual on after a time.
After a time.
Yeah. And I loved Arnold. I thought he was wonderful. He was like a big kid.
Could he act?
Well, I mean, you don't ask that of him, do you? I mean, come on, what do you want?
He projected something for the camera.
Oh, yeah, well, sure he did. And also, I mean, he was a muscle man. He was a great muscle man. So, you know, a lot of guys really like that. But he was a cutout. When I was firing my gun at him, I had a duplicate suit that was bigger, and I had padding all around because at the end of the scene, the policewoman comes in and she hits me in the stomach with her baton. So, you know, they wanted to be certain that I didn't just fall apart. So Joel was the guy who did the special effects. And before every take, he would make sure that those pads were very secure and in the right place. And at a certain moment, we'd done the scene in our 4 or 5 times, and Joel was tugging at my back, and I turned around and said, Joel, what are you doing? It was Arnold. No, it was Arnold.
He was playing with you.
Yes.
Now, in that film, you're really mean. Did you like playing a mean character?
Yeah, I think it's the only time I played a mean.
Really mean character.
Yeah.
You're in a fascinating film that people may not know, Andy Warhol's Bad.
Yeah.
Do you know that?
Yes.
Some of you know that? She's terrific in it. Did you get to know Andy Warhol at all?
Oh yeah, I loved Andy. You know, he had this image, and he loved to make publicity, and he loved to be, you know, eccentric and so forth. Well, what I found was that he was a very normal guy. He was very.
Was it all an act?
Yeah, it was, and it worked. It was wonderful, you know.
He wasn't kooky at all, really?
Not really.
Not really.
No, he was really down to earth. Yeah, he
So
was
he's
wonderful.
a
to
shrewd
me.
self-promoter.
Mhm. Yeah.
Now, going back to Baby Doll, did you get to know Tennessee Williams? Was he ever on the set?
Oh, well, no, I knew Tennessee, but he wasn't allowed on the set because Anne wouldn't allow him on the set. And when I did the audition for Baby Doll, I did it at the Actors Studio for Kazan and Tennessee. And when I finished, Kazan said, yes. And Tennessee said, well, I'd like her to gain about 20 pounds, and I'd like to see big patches of rouge on her face. And Kazan said to him, look, Tennessee, your characters are bizarre enough. Let me cast somebody normal.
And Kazan won.
Yeah, Kazan won.
But Kazan did not want the
No,
playwright
we didn't want him, no, we didn't want him on the set at all.
for fear that he'd be directing the
He'd
actors?
say, yeah, well, then he'd say something with it. They'd go up to him and ask, I don't know. He didn't want, he loved Tennessee's writing, but he didn't like his direction.
Oh, he wanted to be the director.
Yeah.
He wanted to be the director. Now, you've been retired from acting, and as I was telling our friends, Carroll is so well adjusted. She's in the moment. But do you ever say, oh, gee, I'd like to act again, or maybe they'll offer me a big, juicy part? Do you ever think in those terms?
No, I don't. No, I
You don't?
really love being retired. I love sleeping in the morning. I was so sick of those 5 a.m. calls, you know? Yeah, no, I think, you know, when it's time, it's time. Also, I did so much more in show business than just acting. I was a lady magician, and I sang, and I danced, and I was in vaudeville.
Yeah, so that's the past.
Yeah, so, you know, so the thing is, I really never thought of myself, oh, I'm an actress. No, I'm somebody who was in show business.
And you worked for years.
Yeah, I know, yeah, I did.
And right, this is terrific book, by the way, which you all, I believe, have a copy of, and Carroll will sign it for you at the end here. Who Killed Big Al is very entertaining, but I have a few questions. You name the butler my name.
Foster.
Yes.
Well,
and the butler usually does it, you know. Now, did you
it's
name him in my honor, or was that a name you came up with before?
I'm not saying. I'm not saying.
You have to read the book.
Yeah.
But it is.
And then you'll see how close it is or it isn't.
But who was your inspiration? Are you an Agatha Christie fan?
Yes, very much so, yeah. I love Agatha Christie. And a friend of mine who read the book said, oh, I never want to have dinner with you again. I said, why? He said, well, because you know so much about poison. Poison that, poison berries, and poison potato trees. I said, but that's not me. Agatha Christie did all this research. I just copied her.
But how did the plot come to you? We're not going to tell them how it took. You will not guess the ending, by the way. Carol will keep you guessing. But did the plot come to you all in a vision all at once?
Yeah, all at once. Yeah.
All at once?
Yeah.
The characters, the setting, everything came to you?
I wrote it in 2 days. Well, that's because writing is really what they say it is. It's rewriting. You write your stream of consciousness, and you don't dare stop to think about spelling or punctuation or anything. You just let the story flow. And then you go back and you say, oh, I misspelled that. Oh, I better put it.
Then you rewrote it and refined it. But the actual pouring out of the story, 2 days. But a lot longer than that in the rewriting, of course.
Yes,
a lot longer. Yes. And in the polishing, because it's a very polished, well-written book.
Yeah.
And Carol does not have a ghostwriter. It's all her own writing. I helped you a little bit the structure at the very end.
Oh, he helped me a lot. Yeah, the book is dedicated to him, and
I don't deserve it, but
yes, you do.
Yeah, I don't deserve it. Okay, how are we doing with time, Magda? Are we okay?
Wherever you like.
We're okay?
We're okay.
Are there a few questions that you'd like to ask our wonderful guest? Question, Magda.
Yes.
Okay.
What was your first job in show business, and how old were you?
What was your first job in show business, and how old were you?
I was 17 and a half, and I did a dance. I was living with my mother then in Florida, and I did a dance for, I think it was like the Lions Club or something like that, tap dance. I was a pretty good tap dancer, and I got $20. It was wonderful.
So you started out in vaudeville.
Oh, yeah.
And your first idea was not to be an actor.
Oh, no, I just wanted to leave the small town where I was in. Always wanted to come to New York. Love New York.
Never liked Los Angeles or Beverly Hills.
Not very much, no.
But New York, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, Jane.
Yes, Jane, yes. George Papard, who reminds me of my first husband. So you must tell me something about him.
You are naughty.
So was my first husband.
But just to get it on the table,
Just
the
to get it
story
on
of
the
Alan
table,
Ladd,
a little
what
about
George
All right, yeah,
Papard did.
okay.
This is telling the
This
truth.
is what I really didn't like. Alan Ladd was cast by Paramount in the film because he had one picture that he owed them, which was under contract, so he wasn't getting paid very much for it at all. And Alan was very disturbed at the time because his wife had sort of been his manager, his arranger, she did everything for him. And then suddenly, his son became an actor, and the wife took all the attention away from Alan. At least this is what I heard. But he drank, I guess, rather heavily. And I didn't know that they ever did this in movies, but I found out on the Carpetbaggers. The script girl, anytime somebody would mess up a take, they would write down the name. And Alan said, please, please, don't write me down. Don't write me down. Don't say I lost my line. Don't say that. So most of us, you could tell when you were finished speaking if he was ready to go or not. And if he wasn't, you would speak up and say, oh, excuse me, I have to stop. I'm very sorry. So we stopped instead of him.
And you said, it's my fault.
Yeah, I said, my fault. George didn't do that. George was very nasty. He said, oh, you're spoiling my scene and everything. Oh. So I took George aside and I said, you know something, George? You will never be as great as Alan Ladd was. Never in a million years.
And a girl.
That's a moment you do remember.
Yes, yes.
Wow.
Yes.
You've had a very colorful life and quite a few men in your life. And I was just wondering, whatever happened to that very interesting character, Jack Garfine?
Oh, Jack, unfortunately, is... Jack is older than I am, and he just got married last month. And she's younger than he is, and she's very pretty, and she has a job, and he doesn't. And, he's just very lucky. He's just very lucky. But he hasn't been all that well either. But at any rate, I said whenever he passes that they must remember him at the Actors Studio, because at the Actors Studio, Jack was the first one who ever produced a play and directed a play that was all Actors Studio people. And
there's a man.
And there's a man.
And then Jack directed Carroll in a terrific film called Something Wild. I don't know if you know it, but it has quite a reputation, with an original score by Aaron Copland. Wow. It's a very important film, and it really has finally discovered itself, been discovered. We did a great Criterion package for it. So if you're chosen by Criterion and presented in a Criterion, it means your film has been anointed. So all these years later, Something Wild has found its true place. It's important.
It was due to Foster. Foster talked it up.
I did.
He really brought the film back to life.
I think it's a terrific film, and you're terrific.
He's a historian. He's a film historian.
It's not about me. It's about you. It's about you. But Jack and Carroll have two terrific children. Blanche Baker, who's an actress and acting teacher, and Herschel Garfine, who teaches at NYU and who's a great composer and librettist. They're smart, they're devoted, they're great children, and to Carroll, and she's a great mother. As Blanche said, I'll never be able to write a Mommy Dearest book about my mother.
Foster, just one more question about Clark Gable. I'm so sorry you didn't get a chance to see the video. There's a scene where you fall in love with him, and he says, I'm 44, and you don't believe he's 44. He must have been older than that in that scene.
Yes, well, that was, but not for me, was the third film before he passed away. And yeah, he was older, and they never photographed him after lunch.
But you don't. But tell us, you had a mad crush on Clark Gable before you did the film.
Okay. I did. I think I fell in. He was probably my first love. I fell in love with him when I was like 11 in the movie theater. And what I used to go mad for was the way he kissed a woman. That's the reaction I get from all the women. Yeah, he used to put a woman in a back bend kiss. Oh, when he did that to me, they had to help me off the stage.
When you were acting with him, did he know you had a crush on him?
Yes, well, he took me aside, which was very sweet, very nice, and he gave me a talking to. And he said, Carol, when you play a love scene, of course it's got to be as real as possible, but never linger on it. Never get involved with your leading man. After the scene is over, think about something else completely. Go and have a cup of coffee, make a phone call, whatever. But he said, don't linger on that moment. And I think he was protecting himself as well as teaching me.
But he was a decent guy.
Oh yeah, he was a great guy.
He was a great guy. And that film isn't seen very much, but not for me. It's a very entertaining comedy.
Yeah, it is cute, yeah.
And so, as long as we're celebrating here, you were very courageous to do a movie called Bridge to the Sun, which you may not recall, in which your co-star was James Shigeta. Because at the time, actresses in Hollywood didn't want to be seen opposite an Asian actor?
Yes, I was like the sixth actors that they came to, and I never thought of that, but agents were saying, I'm not going to let my actress kiss a Jap. Oh yeah, oh yeah.
You did that, didn't you? Didn't think in those terms at all?
No, and also I had seen and fallen in love with a French film called Hiroshima Mon Amour. Did anybody see that?
Yes.
Oh, it was wonderful, yeah.
So you knew how, it's silly to think in those terms. It's racism.
Yes.
It's racism.
Yes.
It's a very courageous film that you made, really. Terrific.
Well, no, it wasn't courageous. No. But the story was so interesting because, first of all, it was a true story, like Glenn Teriyaki, and it happened, they fell in love during the war. So they weren't welcome in America. You know what they did to the Japanese in America. And then when the two of them went to Japan, she wasn't treated well either. Yeah, so they were very much in love, but they had a struggle in life, big struggle.
I think we should end with an amusing story about The Miracle. In 1959, you were under contract to Warner Brothers, and you said, I don't want to play sex spots all the time, so they offered you The Miracle. Tell us.
Yeah, I turned down one film after another, which was because they wanted me to play sexy little Southern girls, and I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to do a poor imitation of Baby Doll. I loved Tennessee's script. So finally they came to me and they said, okay, we've got a script you can't turn down. It's going to be a wonderful movie. You're going to play a nun. Oh, okay. So, okay, no, that's pretty far away from a sex symbol. That's okay, I'll do that. Well, it turned out that she really wasn't a nun. She was a novice. And she was a novice for like 2-3 minutes of screen time. When Roger Moore came riding through, Roger was so handsome, in a red uniform on a white horse, and then She left the convent. The thing is that she went to Europe and she had so many men. Like you said I had a lot of men.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, but she had bullfighters, and she had gypsies, and she had famous painters. She just had everybody. She was the biggest art nun you ever saw. Yeah.
Okay, hasn't this been fun? Carol will be outside signing copies of your book, and you can come up and say hello.